In Chicago, throughout much of the 20th century, a rugged limestone gate marked the entrance to the heart of the nation's meatpacking industry, before officially closing in 1971. The Union Stockyard Gate survives as a visual reminder of Chicago's former reign in livestock and meatpacking, one that earned it the nickname Hog Butcher to the World. By the mid-1800s, the hub of the nation's meatpacking industry was centralizing in Chicago.
Chicago sits in an incredibly rich hinterland where the hogs and the cattle are being raised, and then you couple that with Chicago becoming the railroad center for the middle part of the country, if not the whole of the country. And then a third piece of this will kick in to get a sense of why Chicago and why at this time period, and that is there's going to be a lot of unskilled labor that's going to be needed in these processing plants, and that unskilled labor can get to Chicago pretty easily along the railroads.
A universe unto itself, the stockyards, feedlots, slaughterhouses, and meat processing plants, together with nearby worker housing, would become known as Packing Town. Days in the stockyards were long, and work in the slaughterhouses was grueling. Working for just pennies an hour, unskilled immigrant laborers wielded sledgehammers and knives in dark and unventilated rooms. In 1904, the Meatpackers Union in Chicago went on strike. That brought a largely unknown writer for a socialist magazine named Upton Sinclair to Chicago. He came to investigate workers' allegations about the conditions in Packing Town. Sinclair spent 6 months interviewing workers and their families and spent time in the meatpacking plants. His resulting book, The Jungle, revealed so much more than he had planned.
The book does chronicle the tough working conditions that the workers face. It does chronicle the problems of housing in the neighborhood and the overcrowding in the neighborhood around back of the yards. But the real impact of the Jungle's book on the American public is an overall repugnance of the food processing that's going on in back of the yards and the food that's coming to their own tables.
Sinclair wrote about diseased, rotten, and contaminated meat doctored by chemicals and mislabeled for sale to the public, and about sausage piled on a dirty floor before workers carried it off in carts holding human urine, rat feces, and in some cases, dead rats.
Upton Sinclair and other muckraking journalists like Upton Sinclair really offered Chicagoans and the country as a whole an inside view on a world that most people weren't going to see, and that reminded people to think long and hard about where the food was that was on their table.
Sinclair's claims convinced President Theodore Roosevelt to appoint a special commission to investigate Chicago's slaughterhouses. And the commission's findings confirmed almost all of Sinclair's claims. Roosevelt pushed Congress to pass new legislation. The new laws prohibited the sale of adulterated or misbranded livestock and ensured that it was slaughtered and processed under sanitary conditions. The U.S. Department of Agriculture would be required to inspect all cattle, sheep, goats, and horses before and after they were slaughtered and processed for consumers. The Jungle became a best-selling novel, but for all the accolades and change for the better that it influenced, its author was disappointed.
The real result of The Jungle, of Upton Sinclair's work, is standards for food and food processing rather than better working conditions and wages for the workers themselves.
Sinclair had wanted the public to be outraged over the poor conditions for the workers, which he had also detailed in his book. He famously said, "I aimed at the public's heart, and by accident, I hit it in the stomach."